Jyn muses on the extreme measures they've taken, pondering the true, sinister purpose behind the Devil Stone's creation. He then comes to a chilling conclusion. There is only one conceivable reason to forge an imitation of such a legendary stone. Their ultimate ambition, a secret, a reincarnated, reborn Manhwa hides until the climax, is to ascend to godhood themselves. Jyn lays out their terrifying plan, to amass the power of all existing deities, crush any opposition, and reign as the one true god of this world. Sir Kashmir Alphen proposes they rest for the time being, pledging a full investigation with his 7 colors, should she consent. He offers to personally escort her to Miss Anna's location, to which she immediately agrees, and he gestures for her to follow. Jilly calls out to Jyn, asking if he's feeling all right now, and just after he confirms he is, she suddenly collapses again, causing Moroccan to blurt out something about strawberry pie. Sometime later, Luna Runandell sits alone, a bottle of wine in her hand, reflecting on her brother's recent actions. He had single-handedly dismantled the city's most notorious underground syndicates, making the independent city far safer for everyone. Not only that, but the Zippel family's vice head invader were also eliminated, all accomplished within a mere 2 months of him becoming a reserve flag bearer. She marvels at how he even used magic without official sanction, a crime punishable by death, and somehow managed to pull it off flawlessly. Luna admits to herself that she had foolishly thought the entire affair was concluded when she captured the initial culprits. But now, the truth had dawned on her. Her youngest brother had known everything from the very beginning. A sudden laugh escapes her, startling Jilly, but Luna quickly reassures her, saying she can let it slide this one time, provided they steer clear of the patriarch. However, she then delivers a grave warning. Their father is already aware of everything, from the teeing incident to the death of Andre Zippel. And it's only a matter of time, she adds, before he discovers her own complicity in these events, prompting a worried Jilly to exclaim how terrible that would be. Just then, Jyn arrives, telling them not to worry because he has a strategy already prepared. He calmly announces his intention to face their father directly, with his eldest sister, Luna, by his side. "You had a plan this whole time?" Luna asks, stunned, as Jyn confirms he's been meaning to confront the patriarch all along. When she presses him on what he'll say, his cryptic answer shocks them both, leaving Jilly to ask just who he is meeting. He trusts that Luna will intervene when the moment comes, remarking on how even their own family fears her, before agreeing to go with her and asking when they will depart. Jyn proposes they take the first teleportation gate in the morning, and Luna agrees, stating that the sooner they move, the better. As Jilly starts to voice a concern, Luna cuts in, her gaze fixed resolutely on her youngest brother. She declares that in a family so consumed by internal strife, she will finally act as a true older sister and become the shield he needs. She expressed her certainty that he would have devised a plan, to which he simply affirmed, of course. After a short while, a magician appeared, remarking on how she had brought him along instead of merely persuading him. Luna Runandell questioned if she was truly expected to believe that Luna Runandell was summoning Jyn Runandell, who confirmed it. Luna added that Rencher ought to treat him well, and she begrudgingly agreed that she should. One of the Runandell brothers then scoffed at the sheer madness of it all, questioning if he cared about anything, acting like some arrogant, reincarnated hero to brazenly seek the Garden of Swords as a mere prospective flag-bearer. Anna Runandell blamed the entire situation on their eldest sister's leniency. Meanwhile, Luna Runandell accused him of shamelessly shirking his duties as a reserve flag-bearer, asserting, "I know you also think this is going too far, don't you, big sister?" She pondered how everyone seemed braced for this outcome, wondering if their father had known all along. She was in disbelief, asking, did the youngest really just surrender his right to be a flag-bearer? It seemed to her as though puberty had sparked in him a morbid curiosity about the afterlife, but she insisted he couldn't just throw it all away. He still owed her a proper fight when he came of age. In the midst of it all, she demanded of her sister, "Why did you bring him here?" Luna Runandell stated plainly that she hadn't. He had come on his own. "Then you should have stopped him." She retorted, "Don't be so thoughtless just because you're Luna Runandell." She then admitted uncertainty about their father's current location, which prompted Jyn to wonder why she was even asking. It occurred to him that at some point, even the great Luna Runandell had started to find Luna Runandell difficult to manage. Luna then asked him directly, "Did you come here to see father?" He confirmed it, addressing his second eldest sister. At this, another boy erupted in laughter, remarking that he truly wanted to perish, claiming his previous survival was nothing but sheer luck. He sneered, "Did you really get so arrogant just from being a little better than the Tom siblings?" Suddenly, a blade was drawn, its cold edge stopping just shy of Luna Runandell's neck, blocking her path entirely. From this moment, the wielder declared, "The first flag-bearer will discard her weapon. This is a strict order from the patriarch." She then reminded the reserve flag-bearer, "Father requested that you come alone. If Luna Runandell does not comply, then you won't be going either. This is her final chance." She reiterated it was an order from the patriarch demanding, so she must discard her weapon. She warned that any form of resistance would be met with his immediate demise. Jyn Runandell, however, calmly assured his eldest sister not to worry as the others tensed for a confrontation. Her worried gaze then shifted back to him. Jyn spoke, not just as his father's son, but as a member of the Runandell family, stating, "I have come to tell him something." He then assured them all, nothing bad is going to happen. She finally relented, telling him simply to go on, as he walked past them and into the formidable castle. Jyn mused that his other siblings didn't know their father at all. they couldn't possibly grasp the kind of deep secret a reborn Manhwa hides. He knew that while it was against all protocol for a reserve flag bearer to return home, he didn't believe their father truly cared for such rules. He just needed the chance to explain, just like last time. He remembered it vividly, his father's hand on his head, the words, "That was a good question," and the promise to keep a close eye on him from that day forward. Jyn Runandell was confident there would be no problem as he reached the heavy study door and knocked. As Jyn entered, his father remarked that it seemed his expectations had been set too high, reminding him that he had been given 5 years. He then questioned why Jyn had returned so soon. Jyn Runandell recalled the tales of how his father's sword energy completely annihilated his enemies. He noted that his father also wielded a sword crafted from aura and was likely making an intentional display of what would happen if he were to use it. Realizing his father might not be as omnipotent as he had once believed, Jyn heard his father state that he would not ask a second time, demanding the reason for his visit. As someone reincarnated, Jyn Runandell reflected that he could not apologize even on pain of death. He had to be confident, but not arrogant. He stated plainly that he had come because he missed him. His father pondered this, having never heard such a sentiment from his children before, and considered that it was not an entirely bad thing. His father then remarked on how immature Jyn Runandell had become, asking if his time in the outside world had made him soft. Jyn Runandell replied that it was not due to his exposure to the outside world, but simply because he had always admired him. He wondered if his father was misinterpreting his feelings as some form of murderous intent and questioned if he had said something wrong. His father nearly laughed, surprised by Jyn Runandell's declaration, and told him to cut the nonsense and get to the real reason he was there. He asked what Jyn had brought for him. Jyn Runandell explained that Andre Zippel, the vice head of the Zippel family who had insulted him during the banquet, was now dead. His father asked if Jyn had been the one to kill him, to which he clarified that it was Luna Runandell, his eldest sister, who had done the deed, though he had contributed to the circumstances. Jyn Runandell then asked for permission to report on the events that had unfolded, adding that there were a few more things to discuss if it was acceptable to his father. His father consented and invited him to take a seat as he descended the stairs. Jyn Runandell's father sat down with him and noted that Jyn had accomplished a great deal, from Aaron to Bint, in a short period. He asked if that was why Jyn had come, to warn him about potential internal strife within the Zippel family following the death of their second-in-command. Jyn replied that Andre Zippel was not the true second-in-command, and while he acknowledged his eldest sister's incredible strength, he pointed out that Andre, as the vice head of the only family that could overpower Runandell, was rather underwhelming. His father concurred, noting that Andre Zippel was indeed just the vice head, not the true power behind the throne. He mentioned that there is someone else with power after Kel, but he could not disclose any more information about that to him. Meanwhile, Jyn Runandell was grateful for this confirmation of his suspicion, as this was the kind of secret a reborn Manhwa hides, and mentioned that his father had not yet been informed of the most critical fact. His father inquired what this fact was, and Jyn revealed that they had utilized a most peculiar artifact. His father sought clarification on what he meant by an artifact, and Jyn confirmed that it was the Devil's Stone, as Andre Zippel himself had called it. Jyn explained that based on the information he had gathered, it was a replica of the Origin Stone, an object said to have been crafted by the gods in ancient times. His father then asked about the Origin Stone and whether Murakhan had explained it to him. Jyn confirmed that he knew of it and was also aware that his father could use mana. His father asked if Jyn truly believed he could conceal such a fact. Jyn acknowledged that he had assumed his father already knew, but apparently he did not, and realized his father was also aware of Murakhan's existence. His father chuckled, explaining that his initial statement about Murakhan had been an educated guess, one he later confirmed on his own. He then inquired about the identity of Butterfront Candle and laughed heartily, remarking on how they had managed to reduce the great black dragon to a mere housecat, clearly amused by the absurdity of it all. Moving on, his father acknowledged the immense significance of the intelligence concerning the imitation Origin Stone that Jyn had acquired, suggesting he also share this with Luna Runandell. Jyn, because he was reincarnated, understood the truly dangerous potential of such a power, uncertain of how far the Zippel family had progressed in its development, and wondered if the rulers of the Black Sea were even aware of the threat. He contemplated a journey to the Black Sea to investigate further. His father then indicated that while he would overlook Jin's transgression of the rules this one time, he expected something in return, asking his son to name one thing he truly desired. Jyn Runandell made his request, that no other member of the Runandell clan be permitted to enter the independent city of Taiken. After a moment of thought, his father inquired about the location where he had secretly established his base, and Jyn Runandell confirmed it was indeed Taiken. His father agreed to the condition, but stipulated that Jyn must first pass a trial administered by the hidden master of Taiken, the noble sword Kashmir Al-Fan, a figure whose true power this reborn Manhwa hides, to prove his worthiness. Jyn added that if he were to succeed, he would not permit any other Runandell family member to set foot in Taiken without his express permission. His father then set a 1-year time limit for Jyn to prove his value and earn the trust of Kashmir, the very same man who had previously declined the prestigious position of a Runandell instructor. Just then, Kashmir Al-Fan arrived and concurred with the arrangement, and Jin's father confirmed that this was how it would be settled. After a moment, Kashmir Al-Fan contemplated that this man before him was the world's strongest knight, Chiron Runandell, and wondered if he could truly be called the most dignified man alive. He felt a sense of unease just by looking at him. Still, he reminded himself that Chiron Runandell was a guest in the Runandell mansion, and thus there was no reason to fear him. Chiron Runandell acknowledged Kashmir Alfen as the noble sword and offered a bow of respect. Kashmir Alfen quickly requested that he drop the noble sword title and simply call him Kashmir Alfen, feeling flustered by such formalities in front of Chiron himself. Jyn Runandell then addressed his father, who prompted him to speak his mind. Jyn explained that his relationship with Sir Kashmir Alfen was now one of his shared destiny, as he had successfully proven his bond with Sir Kashmir Alfen, and the time had come to fulfill the promise made. Internally, Kashmir Alfen questioned young master Jyn Runandell's bold choice of words concerning a shared destiny. Chiron Runandell immediately questioned this concept of a shared destiny with his son, suggesting it implied that Tychon now effectively belonged to the Runandell family, and that Tychon and Runandell could become unified through such a declaration. Kashmir Alfen silently pondered this interpretation, acknowledging that Tychon's very independence was now on the line. Despite being implicitly accused of deceiving his father, Jyn Runandell confidently asserted his position. He interrupted to refute the accusation, insisting that his success was merely a matter of good fortune. Chiron Runandell acknowledged this, and declared that from that day forward, no member of the Runandell clan could enter Tychon without Jyn's explicit permission. Jyn expressed his gratitude to his father and took his leave. Kashmir Alfen was left to reflect that they would now, indeed, share a common destiny forever. Chiron Runandell coolly informed Jyn that if his business was concluded, he should depart, as there were private matters to discuss with Kashmir Alfen. Jyn readily agreed, stating he would wait outside the mansion, but Kashmir Alfen interjected, requesting a brief moment with Sir Jyn. Chiron granted the request, inviting Kashmir to speak his mind, to which Kashmir expressed his gratitude for the honor. Meanwhile, Deatona and Htona rushed over to Jyn, their faces etched with concern as they asked if he was unharmed. Jyn glanced at them nonchalantly, questioning their presence, prompting Deatona to ask in disbelief why he would pull such a reckless stunt. Deatona pressed on, asking if their father had actually agreed to spare his life, while Jyn mused that they must have been hiding nearby, sensing the tense atmosphere. He then asked if they could do him a small favor, a classic move a protagonist in a reborn Manhwa hides behind to set their plans in motion, and they immediately asked what he required. Jyn replied casually, "It's nothing major, just make sure the cadets in my faction are well looked after until my return." A confused Deatona questioned, "Hold on, what do you mean, your faction?" before quickly changing the subject. "Actually, never mind that. Are you really okay?" As he walked away, Jyn wryly wondered, since when his brothers had started worrying about him, before adding, "In any case, I'm counting on you." Honor remarked that Jyn was as carefree as ever, even after a direct confrontation with their father, a sentiment with which Deatona wholeheartedly agreed. Deatona added that, as usual, there was something unnerving about him, almost as if he'd been reincarnated with foreknowledge of everything, and they watched as Jyn departed from the palace. Just then, another brother appeared, stating his intent to see their father to ask some questions about that fateful day, but Mayu Runandell cut him off. She called out to Jyn sharply, demanding to know if he was completely disregarding the gravity of the situation and deliberately ignoring his siblings. Jyn offered a brief apology, explaining that the matter was too significant for him to discuss openly, a truth a protagonist who has been reincarnated often bears. Mayu, infuriated, demanded to know how he could be so brazen just as Kashmir Alfen appeared, remarking, "So this is where you were?" Jyn simply asked if his discussion had gone well. Kashmir confirmed that it had, much to Jin's relief, but Mayu turned her fury on the newcomer, questioning what he was doing there. She noted his earlier entrance and demanded to know how an outsider dared to stand so casually in the sacred gardens of the Runandell clan. At that moment, Luna Runandell intervened, commanding them to stand down as it appeared the patriarch had concluded his business. She then sheathed her sword. Her action signaled that the confrontation was over. Jyn immediately expressed his gratitude, thanking his eldest sister for her efforts. He added that he was as always deeply in her debt, but Luna simply reassured him that it was nothing to worry about. She stated that a simple thank you was sufficient, to which Jyn sincerely replied, "Thank you for your help." Luna then inquired if he was planning to depart immediately, and he confirmed, stating his intention to dedicate himself entirely to training. He explained he'd be focusing on his training for some time. She wished him well, and he promised he would see his eldest sister and older brothers again soon. 1 month later, the scene transitions to the subterranean training hall of Kashmir Alfan's estate, where Kashmir was reflecting on the recent spars. In the 30th match between Jyn Runandell and Alicia Badger, Jyn had just suffered his 30th consecutive defeat. Undeterred, Jyn requested one more round, his eyes burning with the desire for a 31st attempt, showing the grit a hero in a reborn Manhwa hides. In the year 1795, early in the month of August, the Zippel family made an official announcement regarding the deaths of Anar and Vad. They confirmed the two were gone but failed to disclose the cause of death, a conspicuous omission that immediately sparked a whirlwind of rumors. Some whispered it was the result of internal political conflict, a secret a powerful family in a reborn Manhwa hides, while others speculated they had fallen in a forgotten battle, a conflict with some shadowy organization. Another rumor suggested they were executed for angering the Emperor of Beeman. However, the most credible theory pointed to their demise during a confrontation with the formidable Runandell family. People immediately began to speculate about an imminent war between the Zippel and Runandell clans, debating whether sword or sorcery would ultimately reign supreme. The answer to this speculation would likely be revealed by which of the existing neutral powers chose to align themselves and when they made their move. Meanwhile, an aide with yellow hair reported that the prince from the Churn Kingdom and 5 second-grade mercenary guilds have requested support and sent lavish gifts. Kashmir Alphen instructed his subordinate to return the offerings but accept the requests, also arranging for a respectable sword to be sent to the Churn Kingdom to ensure the prince successfully ascends to the throne. Later, the blonde-haired aide confirmed they would dispatch an 8-star guardian knight. Jyn Runandell grumbled that this entire situation stemmed from the youngest stirring up trouble on one of the family's deserted islands. He criticized the boy for already wielding such influence over the family's affairs. He then summoned Knight Conan, directing him to depart for the Black Sea once more. He added that if a letter from Kashmir Alphen arrived, Conan was to bring it directly to Jyn Runandell without a moment's delay. Knight Conan affirmed that he understood the instructions perfectly. Elsewhere, Jyn Runandell was deeply focused on his sword practice, believing that the 1000th swing must feel as sharp and deliberate as the very first, yet he still felt a profound sense of inadequacy. He acknowledged that if not for his sister, Luna Runandell, he would have surely died back then. Reflecting on the 15 years since he was reincarnated, he noted that he had achieved the 5-star level in both swordsmanship and magic, and was tantalizingly close to reaching that same rank in shadow energy as well. Despite this, when he considered the future battles he knew were coming, he understood he needed to become vastly stronger. He resolved that within the 5 years his father had allotted him, he must become so overwhelmingly powerful that he could surpass all of his siblings. At that moment, Kashmir Alphen intervened, asking the young master to pause his training and advising that if he pushed himself this hard daily, even with the gifted physique of the Runandell clan, his body would eventually be ruined. Jyn Runandell then asked why Misha and Sir Kashmir were there. Misha gasped, noticing his hands were completely torn apart, and worriedly asked what she should do as his blood was dripping to the ground. She quickly took hold of his hand. He admitted quietly that he must be getting impatient. Kashmir Alphen commented that although there was likely no one his age who could match him, his future opponents would be anything but normal. Jyn Runandell's impatience, he explained, was the greatest poison. The true path to power, much like a reborn Manhwa hides its secrets, would ultimately make him regress. Jyn Runandell admitted his shame, knowing it to be true but finding it difficult to control. Misha began channeling her healing magic to mend his ravaged hands. Kashmir Alphen reassured him that it was nothing to be ashamed of, seeing as he was completing an amount of training that no normal person could ever accomplish in a single day. In truth, it was astonishing. He then suggested a change of pace to a training method that would calm his spirit. Jyn asked what kind of training could possibly calm him, and Kashmir Alphen replied that it was sparring with an opponent who was overwhelmingly stronger than him. Jyn Runandell's eyes widened as he asked if Kashmir was referring to himself. Kashmir responded with a simple question, asking what Jyn himself thought. And though he had recently shown a more vulnerable side, he confidently drew his blade. With his blade unsheathed, he shatters a nearby wall and introduces himself as the noble sword, Kashmir Alphen, before proposing they have a spar. Given that Jyn Runandell managed to deflect the blow, Kashmir declares that for now, he should be content with sparring against Tikan's most powerful guard, none other than Alicia Badger. As she makes her entrance, Alicia remarks that it has been quite some time since she last witnessed her husband's sword in action. Kashmir Alphen then lays out a challenge for Jyn: defeat Alicia within a 6-month time frame by utilizing the full extent of his skills in swordsmanship, magic, and shadow energy. Young Julia approaches her mother, asking if she is really going to fight with brother Jyn, to which her mother calmly responds, explaining that it is not a fight, but rather a way for them to strengthen their friendship. Confused, Julia asks what that means and admits that she doesn't like fighting at all. Her mother then playfully asks Julia who she would cheer for if she and brother Jyn Runandell were to have a serious fight. Julia immediately replies that she would cheer for brother Jyn Runandell, much to her mother's feigned shock. Her mother questions this choice, reminding Julia that she's supposed to be on mommy's side in moments like these. Meanwhile, Jyn Runandell observes his future opponent, thinking to himself that apart from her obvious physical abilities, Alicia Badger doesn't radiate an aura of overwhelming strength. Julia then explains her reasoning. Brother Jyn is weak, and mommy always taught her to support the weaker person and encourage them to try harder. At this, Alicia Badger can't help but laugh, assuring them it's no bother and noting that her daughter is brutally honest. Jyn Runandell simply replies that he doesn't mind at all. Alicia then proposes that they schedule their duels for after she finishes work and dinner. This rigorous schedule would continue every single day for 6 months. Jyn questions the everyday part, voicing his concern that he would be taking up an unreasonable amount of her time. Alicia just laughs again, telling him not to worry because the time will pass in a flash. Fast forward 2 days, and the scene is set for Jyn Runandell and Alicia Badger's first bout. He silently gauges her, wondering if she is as skilled as they say. Alicia speaks first, stating she has something to clarify before they begin, revealing that she once worked for Vermont's Special Affairs Division. She gives him a stark warning. In this fight, she will not hold back an ounce of her power, so he must not be discouraged even if he is utterly defeated. Jyn Runandell's mind races, connecting the dots of the 6-month training period. He realizes there is a deeper purpose here, the kind of secret a reborn Manhwa hides, and being reincarnated gives him the insight to see it. Armed with this realization, he resolves not to be careless. The moment the spar begins, Alicia Badger rushes in for a punch, and Jyn is nearly slammed into a wall. But he narrowly manages to block the immense force of her attack. He instantly shifts into his spiritual form, drawing his sword and launching a swift counteroffensive, but Alicia evades it with practiced ease. He cheekily asks if she needs a medic, to which she confirms before delivering a punch that sends him flying across the training ground. Afterward, Alicia expresses genuine surprise that he endured 2 of her attacks on the very first day, especially since she hadn't used much force in her initial strike. She then asks if Jyn was attempting to subtly weaken the ground beneath them before they even began. Jyn confirms her suspicion, impressed that she figured out his tactic just before the end. She then inquires about the blinding flash of light during their clash, identifying it as a type of magic completely foreign to her. Jyn begins to explain, saying it was an ancient spell called Flash Veil, which he had encoded into his sword prior to the match. However, he candidly acknowledges that such simple tricks are unlikely to be effective against a warrior of her caliber. Alicia takes issue with his use of the word tricks, suggesting they are more accurately called strategies. She reflects aloud that Jin's uncanny talent for defeating opponents far stronger than himself is probably not solely a product of luck. He thinks to himself that every opportunity and every turning point in a battle is created through his own detailed calculations. His predictive abilities, a skill he could certainly respect since he employed it himself during their spar. But if this had been a real battle to the end, he could practically see the smug looks on his enemies' faces. This marked the very first time he, as a reincarnated soul, had been so utterly and completely defeated in this new life. Even after exhausting every strategy in his arsenal, he couldn't help but wonder if her victory was simply because she hailed from Beeman's elite special affairs division. If he truly intended to surpass her within 6 months, he would need to face her power relentlessly throughout that entire period. The thought of this challenge sent a thrill through him. Meanwhile, Kashmir Alfin was carefully penning a letter. A month later, on the 22nd of September in the year 1795, in a lawless region on the continent's eastern coast called the Black Sea, Htona had just vanquished a monster. He then knelt respectfully before Jyn Runandell, introducing himself as Guardian Knight. He offered a letter from Kashmir Alfin, which had been delivered 10 days prior. Jyn Runandell accepted the correspondence, broke the seal, and began to read its contents aloud. The message started by expressing deep regret for not being able to properly convey the sender's profound appreciation and immense gratitude. It went on to say that it was currently nightfall in Tikkun, poetically describing how the stars shone like diamonds against a dark velvet sky, as though they were singing a chorus of praise in honor of Sir Karen's magnificence. The letter was signed, Kashmir Alfin, a humble swordsman. Jyn Runandell remarked dryly that he had merely instructed Kashmir Alfin to report on the youngest, noting that the man appeared to be an overly sentimental person. He made a mental note to advise Kashmir Alfin to be far more direct and concise in his future reports concerning the boy. He then revealed that he had already been monitoring the youngest development on that isolated island, and pointed out that the boy had been suffering one defeat after another at the hands of Kashmir Alfin's wife. He detailed how the number of successful strikes against him had climbed from a mere 3 in their first match to 40 by their 30th. The report then elaborated on their 40th duel, where the youngest endured more than 120 blows, a testament to his staggering improvement. It seems this reborn Manhwa hides his true potential under layers of adversity. Htona then commented on the sheer number of losses, wondering aloud if there was some twisted amusement in watching the young master's repeated defeats. Jyn Runandell clarified that Kashmir Alfin's wife hails from Beeman's Special Affairs 2nd Division, implying she was hardly an adversary the young master could overcome with simple luck. He offered his congratulations to Htona before adding that during that 40th confrontation, the boy withstood over 120 strikes, which proved that he had finally shattered his previous limitations. With a tone of sincere regret, Jyn Runandell then stated that if the youngest had been the firstborn son, he would have passed on the leadership of the family to him without a moment's hesitation. But alas, he sighed, it is a great misfortune. Htona inquired why the current heir hadn't been mentioned, observing that this was the very first time he'd heard Jyn Runandell speak so personally on the matter of succession. He thought back on all the times he had watched from the sidelines, never hearing any concrete details about the chosen one, stressing the fact that Joshua Randall's current standing came from Lunar Runell stepping aside, rather than a direct appointment from the patriarch himself. In Htonia's private opinion, Joshua was still far too young and lacked the necessary experience to handle such a monumental responsibility. Jyn Runandell conceded that Joshua's growth had been exceptional, but he also pointed out that merely being suitable for the role didn't guarantee his confirmation. Htona couldn't help but ask why Chiron would say such a thing, to which Chiron replied that he wasn't being heartless. Instead, he was simply observing Joshua's inherently gentle nature. Jyn recognized that Joshua's upbringing was vastly different from his own, and he stressed the absolute necessity of being capable of cutting off even family when the situation demanded it. Yes, Jyn Runandell affirmed, that is what it means to be a Randall, understands and agrees to return for the time being. Htona concurs, and Jyn Runandell then demands to know why a letter dispatched 10 days prior arrived so incredibly late. He offers his apologies, stating he did his utmost to hurry, but due to an extreme number of monsters swarming the path, he was unavoidably delayed. Jyn Runandell says he supposes that will suffice, but reminds him to arrive a full day earlier next time, to which the man hastily agrees. Elsewhere, Alicia Badger remarks that today marks the 93rd day, and he's a truly amazing young master, considering the immense progress he has already made. Jyn Runandell just laughs and says he must continue working hard in order to see this through within 6 months. Alicia Badger then asks about having dessert upstairs, mentioning that she heard Latry had prepared some ice cream. He declines the offer, explaining that he still has something important he needs to do, prompting Alicia Badger to inquire if he will be training again today. He replies, "Of course, I still have a very long way to go," as he firmly grips his sword. Alicia Badger thinks to herself that she feels this every single time they spar, but young Master Jyn Runandell's growth is simply abnormal, almost as if he were reincarnated. She figures it's probably because his aura and magic power are developing in perfect sync, and the very thing that makes that possible is that mysterious black power which connects his aura and magic. She recalls hearing it was a power he obtained by forging a contract with a god. How truly incredible, she muses. Still, even if that power is astounding, it is only meaningful because of his sheer endurance, a genius who never stops working hard. The secret this reborn Manhwa hides is just how powerful he can become. Months. She thinks with determination, "I will defeat him tomorrow." The scene cuts to the next day, where Alicia Badger and Jyn Runandell are practicing once again. Alicia Badger declares, "That's a rather obvious screening," as she lunges forward to attack Jyn. Runandell deftly blocks her assault. Jyn Runandell then counters an attack from Alicia Badger, and she gets injured in the exchange. He asks if she is okay, and Alicia Badger insists she's all right. However, it has been quite a while since she sustained an injury like this. Jyn Runandell says he will go get Mia, thinking that was a stab she could have easily dodged, and he was simply lucky in this bout. Alicia Badger reflects that she grew careless when her sight was obscured by the shadow energy. She thought he would resort to the same movements as before, so she failed to consider his next move. She chides herself for getting sloppy after retiring, and once again rushes to attack him, telling herself things had gotten troublesome and realizing that she might actually lose before the time he promised her was up. Jyn Runandell says, "No, it's fine," believing it's better to call this fight a draw. It's a victory that he simply can't bring himself to accept. Meanwhile, Alicia Badger acknowledges that she knew he would say something like that. She offers a sincere apology for being both careless and discourteous towards him. Miss Inia uses her healing energy on the wound, but they know they can't just turn a blind eye to this incident. He says, "If it had been the me from 3 months ago, even if you had been careless, would it have ended up like this?" Alicia Badger has to agree that he has grown tremendously, citing his seemingly endless ambition, his fierce fighting spirit, and the innate talent required to make such growth a reality. She is confident he will soon become a 6-star master in both aura and magic. She believes that when that day comes, everything will become crystal clear. The scene then jumps to the 1st of December, 1795, where Jyn Runandell asks Moroccan why he purchased so many popsicles on such a cold day. Moroccan replies that cold things always taste their best when it's freezing outside, and besides, Strawberry Pie said she really wanted to eat one. Jyn Runandell asks if he's scheming to make Jill's stomach rupture. Just then, Kashmir Alphan arrives and addresses Jyn Runandell, inquiring if it would be a convenient time to discuss business. To speak about work for a moment, Jyn Runandell brings up Bishal Ibano, the man who served as the temporary leader of the Ibano family. He was the sole remarkable talent in a household that was crumbling from a severe lack of skilled individuals. Jyn explains that he had requested a file on him. Before delving into the details, Kashmir asks if Jyn Runandell is familiar with the organization known as Cow. Jyn Runandell confirms he encountered them during a mission back in his cadet days, which should expedite their conversation. Kashmir states that while he isn't entirely certain, there's a strong possibility that Bishal Ibano is a member of the Cow group. He explains that Ibano travels to the Carano Principality once every week, and each time, he seeks out a peculiar workshop. This place goes by the bizarre name, Explosion is Art. He adds that the proprietor is a man named Boer Gaston, and based on his findings, Gaston is an executive of Cow, which strongly suggests a very close relationship between the two. Kashmir Alphan interjects, noting that, at this juncture, the possibility is high, particularly since they've confirmed Bishal Ibano brings offerings of bread and food on every visit. This implies that Gaston holds a superior rank, which would explain why he personally intervened during the banquet. Jyn reflects on Cow, musing that he'd always dismissed them as a mere extremist political faction, but for an 8-star fighter to be involved with them raises serious questions. He recalls what those fools did in his past life, a secret memory he holds since he was reincarnated, and it starts to make sense why they never dared to recklessly challenge the Runandell or Zippel families. Meanwhile, Mirren tells the child to stop, insisting that Jyn Runandell is currently occupied and that she should wait. Defiantly, Julia grabs his hair and calls out to Jyn Runandell before performing a magic spell. Mirren conjures an ice ball and hurls it at Kashmir Alphan, who glances back and asks his daughter why she would do that to her own daddy. Changing the subject, Jyn Runandell calls to Kashmir Alphan, asking if there's been any new information on Spider Hans Alu. Kashmir Alphan replies that Alu is shrouded in far more secrets than he ever anticipated. It's a mystery so deep it's as if a reborn Manhwa hides its protagonist's true origin. Even though the elite troops of the 7 colors are on the case, there are absolutely no traces of him from before he became the head of Tessing. It's as if someone deliberately wiped his entire history clean. Jyn Runandell thinks to himself that perhaps he should have just killed him, then verbally acknowledges the report, thanking him for his diligent work. Kashmir Alphen clarifies that his informants deserve the credit and promises he will continue to dig deeper into the cow organization. He adds that he will report back immediately if any new information surfaces. Jyn Runandell expresses his profound and perpetual gratitude, saying he is forever in his debt. Kashmir Alphen waves it off, saying it's nothing, but adds that if he's truly grateful, then he should spend some time playing with Julia. Jyn Runandell agrees with the sentiment but explains that today is a bit difficult. He mentions that it's nearly time for his scheduled sparring session and extends an invitation for Kashmir Alphen to join. Kashmir Alphen responds that it sounds like an excellent idea, admitting he's also quite curious to witness young master Jyn Runandell's progress. Jyn Runandell assures him it will be a sight to look forward to, mentioning that he has recently had a breakthrough of sorts. Just then, Alicia Badger asks what on earth he's talking about and demands to know why Kashmir is present. Kashmir Alphen playfully asks if he isn't allowed to be there. He explains that the young master invited him, so he came. Alicia Badger concedes that he is allowed, but she grumbles that she doesn't want him to witness her losing. Confused, Kashmir Alphen asks what she just said, looking towards young master Jyn Runandell, believing this will be their final day. Alicia Badger remarks that she hopes he'll remember her as a worthy opponent long into the future. Jyn Runandell questions her choice of words, stating that he will not just see her as an opponent, but will remember her as an excellent teacher and a dear friend. Kashmir Alphen, observing, wonders at his words, thinking it's only been a little over 3 months, yet he's certain Alicia Badger is about to be defeated. Alicia asks if they should begin, just as Jyn Runandell summons a magnificent phoenix. Kashmir Alphen reflects on the fact that 6-star mages gain the authority to forge contracts with such entities. However, the specific Phoenix 1 contracts is a matter of chance, as mages can only pry open the dimensional gateway to the realm of fire. He muses that because their power is limited to opening the gate, the ultimate choice rests entirely with the phoenixes themselves. For that very reason, mages yearn for a special phoenix to select them. His thoughts drift to the most legendary of them all, the phoenix that wields azure flames, the kind of ultimate power a reborn Manhwa hides. Kashmir Alphen gasps that it's impossible, questioning if Jyn truly forged a contract with Tess. His mind races, thinking about Tess, and how the few mages who could summon her were the absolute legends of their eras. It's as if Jyn was reincarnated from that very age. Badger, she's ready to begin, and she confirms she is. Both combatants take their stances. Meanwhile, Alicia Badger analyzes the 5-star level fire magic confronting her, but there's more to it. The flames emanate a peculiar power. She knows that if they touch her, her body will feel incredibly heavy. She identifies it as a form of pressure, an oppressive force pushing her down. If she's struck by it, her stamina consumption will skyrocket. This bout needs to end quickly, she thinks, calculating that she can only maintain Tess's manifestation for another 3 minutes. She resolves to end it within that time frame, but Jyn Runandell suddenly launches his attack. Alicia Badger is struck, her mind screaming that it was a sword strike, only to realize it was actually wind magic. In that same moment, Jyn Runandell thinks that while Alicia Badger employs a wide array of movement patterns, they all share a single, common principle: dominance. He deduces that she seeks to dominate her opponent in any given situation and speculates she's likely attempting to reassert that dominance at this very moment. Locking eyes with her, he decides to unleash that specific strike, but she narrowly evades his assault. He follows up with a blast of fire magic, but she sidesteps with incredible speed, escaping the attack. He then grips his sword and charges forward to engage her directly. She momentarily considers dodging, but realizes that doing so would force her onto the defensive, endlessly weathering young master Jyn Runandell's onslaught. Resigned, she decides there's no other choice. Alicia Badger calls out, asking if he's trying to prove he's a magic swordsman, just as Jyn Runandell unleashes his azure mana in a powerful strike. Alicia Badger exclaims in triumph, believing she's finally trapped him. She questions where he went, certain there was no way he could have possibly escaped her weapon's pressure. Her hope shatters as she realizes he's behind her, just before a devastating blow sends her reeling, blood erupting from her lips. She immediately concedes the match, acknowledging young master Jyn Runandell's victory. Jyn then turns to Kashmir Alphen and tells him to call for Misha, before asking him to repeat what he had said earlier about a microbe. Elsewhere, Morin confirms the news, stating yes, the young master Jyn Runandell has indeed defeated Alicia Badger in their duel. He remarks that he knew Jyn would be astounded to have defeated Alicia Badger, a top agent from B's Special Affairs Division, in a mere 3 months. Then, he quickly corrects himself. No, that wasn't it, Jyn Runandell declared, summoning his trump card. Kashmir Alphen, understanding, explained, pardon me, but he just summoned a phoenix. Tess. Everyone present was utterly stunned by this revelation. Alicia Badger confessed that she had gone too far by using an aura shield to secure victory, but it ultimately became her own downfall. She expressed genuine surprise, wondering how someone so clever, almost as if he were *** reincarnated ***, could be caught by an attack from behind twice. She then questioned when he had orchestrated such a plan. Jyn Runandell coolly replied that he'd planned it since their very first match, admitting that saying so might make him sound incredibly arrogant as he casually poured some water over his head. Alicia Badger laughed, agreeing that if it were the young master Jyn Runandell, then such confidence was to be expected. Jyn Runandell sincerely thanked her for the duel. She replied that it was enjoyable for her as well, and asked if he had any idea how proud she felt. She then quizzed him on his feelings about defeating someone from the Special Division, a feat unheard of for someone not yet 16, a true protagonist from a *** reborn manhwa ***. Just then, Mirren arrived, calling for Jyn Runandell, who acknowledged that he heard his voice. Mirren immediately instructed him to summon the Phoenix right now. Without delay, Jyn Runandell called forth the Phoenix. Quickentell bowed deeply, greeting the master of the flame. Mirren acknowledged her, stating that it had indeed been a while. The Phoenix then unexpectedly pecked him right in the face, prompting Mirren to interrupt, asking why it did that and reminding the Phoenix that it could speak to him casually, as it was a free entity. The Phoenix apologized, simply saying it was sorry. Meanwhile, Jyn Runandell was experiencing a and rather refreshing sensation while Mirren interjected, saying he had something to tell him and that he would pass on a message, word for word, so he pleaded with Jyn Runandell to stop. All the while, the Phoenix kept pecking him, and Quickentell remained bowed. Mirren insisted with grave seriousness that Jyn Runandell should recall this elder immediately. Jyn Runandell nonchalantly agreed, saying, "All right, sure," and recalled the Phoenix. Mirren then seriously questioned why it was pecking him. Jyn Runandell called out to the Phoenix, and the Phoenix responded, saying that he'd probably like to know why the great Mirren was fawning over a mere bluebird. It then explained that this wasn't Tess's true form. Its real form could only be witnessed within the fire realm. Jyn Runandell immediately asked what the fire realm was, wondering if that was the name of the world where phoenixes originated. The Phoenix confirmed that it was indeed another world, and while this was Jyn Runandell's first time hearing of the fire realm, it's the kind of deep lore. A typical *** reborn manhwa hides ** from its readers, a term that is only used by gods and dragons. The Phoenix explained that it's merely a convenient name they use and not even the highest-ranking gods know the true name of that place. Jyn Runandell probed further, asking if the gods' ignorance meant that place was beyond the authority of the gods themselves. The Phoenix confirmed this was correct, which is precisely why even the flame god, she knew, cannot wield the flames from the fire realm. Now, what I'm about to say next is the important part, it continued, stating that in the distant past, there was a time when several beings left the fire realm, including dragons like Quickentell in itself. However, a few of the gods began to get on Tess's nerves. The Phoenix explained that was the day they all witnessed Tess's true power, and the enraged Tess incinerated 5 gods and several dragons on the spot. Jyn Runandell was floored, asking, "Wait, is Tess really that incredible? Then how powerful does someone have to be to unleash that kind of strength?" The Phoenix asserted that it's utterly impossible, no matter how strong you become, explaining that you can never bring out all of its strength. It emphasized that it doesn't matter who you are. You can't perfectly wield the power of a being from another world. It compared this limitation to a penalty, explaining that explains why the gods who descended upon this world were rendered powerless. It's the very same principle that restricts Tess from unleashing his full potential here. However, he wryly adds that even with these limitations, a mere mortal would be instantly incinerated by his presence. Jyn Runandell wonders aloud how such a terrifyingly powerful being can be ready for battle the moment he's summoned, questioning if Tess even realizes how startled they all were. He was genuinely afraid that if Tess lost his temper, he would be turned to ash. The ancient Phoenix clarifies that if that were his intention, he never would have chosen Jyn in the first place. He then conveys a message from the Elder, stating that he holds Jyn Runandell in very high regard and offers his congratulations. Jyn processes this, realizing Tess is a being far greater than he ever imagined, perhaps even surpassing Shinu, the god of fire who commands every flame in existence. He mentally pits Tess's power against that of Shinu's contractor, Kel, and the guardian dragon Kajina. He comes to a stark conclusion: no form of fire would ever work against Tess. The true extent of his power, much like how a ** reincarnated, reborn manhwa hides ** its protagonist's ultimate abilities, is simply unfathomable. However, having Tess on their side with his legendary blue flames during the coming war between the Runandell and Zippel families will be an immense advantage. The scene then shifts to the 2nd of January. In the year 1796, where Chiron Runandell remarks on Jyn being chosen by Tess, finding it rather amusing. Though he personally is not particularly interested in phoenixes, he observes that this is all the progress Jyn has made with his swordsmanship alone and explains further, stating that while he permitted Jyn to use magic and shadow energy, at his core, he is a Runandell. Chiron then summons Knight Conan, asking him to confirm if Ron Heron indeed has a grandson. Knight Conan affirms this, acknowledging that he received a report concerning the Heron family's heir just a couple of days prior. Chiron Runandell remarks on their good fortune, and Knight Conan concurs, specifying that it's in relation to the Cosmos competition request, which involves the assassination of a certain pirate taking part in the tournament. He notes that on the official list of participants, Dante Heron has cleverly registered under an alias. The way this new rival has appeared is a classic trope. It's the kind of plot twist a ** reincarnated, reborn manhwa hides ** to build suspense. He recalls that the Cosmos competition is a grand fighting tournament hosted by pirates, and remembers that a decade ago, Mary herself was the runner-up. It was the young Miss's first ever defeat, though 2 months later, she sought a rematch. Now, he's sending the youngest there as well. Chiron acknowledges that many eyes will be watching, meaning Jyn won't be able to rely on his magic or shadow energy. He will be forced to use his sword, and only his sword, to achieve victory. He predicts that in a duel against a true genius who has dedicated his life to swordsmanship, the youngest will have a profound realization that as a Runandell, he must ultimately prove his worth with the blade. Sometime later, Morrison arrives and politely asks Jyn Runandell if he might have a look at a document. A curious Jyn inquires about the paper's contents, and Merkin reveals that it's an application form to enter the Cosmos competition. Jyn Runandell expresses his surprise, questioning this sudden desire to participate in what is essentially a pirate's playground. Merkin explains that it's a little something he prepared for Jyn Runandell as a reward for all his recent hard work. He adds that according to the seven-colored peacock, it appears that Dante Heron, of the prestigious Heron family, will also be participating in the competition. Merkin elaborates, explaining that Dante's grandfather, the current patriarch Ron Heron, was once considered an equal to Sir Karen Runandell before he became the family head. He adds that Dante is Ron Heron's most treasured grandson, a prodigy whose true strength is a well-guarded secret. He is the kind of rival reincarnated reborn Manhwa hides until the perfect tournament arc. He then asks Jyn if he isn't the least bit curious to discover just how strong this rival heir truly is. Jyn Runandell pauses to think for a moment before asking if his participation is truly necessary. Merkin replies with a knowing smile, "No, young Master Jyn, but please, consider it very carefully. He is the heir apparent to the Heron family, which means Jyn Runandell will not get another opportunity to cross swords with him." Jyn Runandell concedes that since Kashmir Alphen is being this insistent, he is left with no choice but to participate. Kashmir Alphen replies with his thanks, affirming that Jyn Runandell made the correct decision, and it is in that moment Jyn Runandell understands. He finally grasps the situation and requests a private conversation with Kashmir Alphen. As he steps aside, he wonders if Kashmir Alphen purposefully arranged this behind his back. He reasons that for him to orchestrate a fight against the Heron family's grandson, it must signify that swordsmanship is the absolute highest priority. Jyn Runandell also observes that Kashmir Alphen seems to have his hands full. Kashmir Alphen explains that he must depart tomorrow, noting that the schedule is rather tight. Jyn Runandell asks him to wait, but Kashmir Alphen simply replies, "Then please, have a safe trip," and turns to leave. Jyn Runandell calls out to stop him. "Wait, sir." The scene then shifts to the Bow Empire, an island located in the south. Our protagonist reflects that this is the first task he's undertaken alone since his journey to Mammoth, and this place is even more nauseating than Mammoth. He finds the idea of the Cosmos competition, a brutal fighting tournament, being held here absurd. It's a competition where you are permitted to kill your opponent with absolutely no restrictions on weapons. You can even assassinate or poison a rival before a match. He questions the sanity of the patriarch for allowing a grandchild of the great Heron family to take part in such a lawless tournament in this kind of place. He ultimately concludes that, no matter the reason, the opportunity to face him is a good thing. It's the kind of valuable experience a reincarnated, reborn Manhwa hides for the perfect moment. He remarks that the place reeks, as usual, and declares with a grin, "All right, let's have some fun." He is then confronted by the Pirate King Cosmos. The Pirate King demands to know who he is, to which Jyn Runandell calmly replies that he's come to enter the competition. Pirate King Cosmos declares that all applications are closed and tells Jyn Runandell to get lost, even suggesting it would be better if he were to perish on his way back. Jyn Runandell counters, stating he was certain he heard applications were open until sunset today. The Pirate King scoffs at this, claiming he is not in the mood to process applications right now, and asks if Jyn Runandell fails to understand. He insists that he is incredibly busy and tells him to stop bothering him and to get lost. He then snaps, "What are you doing?" as a pouch of coins is tossed at his face right before he is struck by a punch. "Is this enough?" Jyn asks, telling him to write his name down. Enraged, the Pirate King Cosmos erupts in a loud shout, acknowledging Jyn Runandell's intensity, but then admits with a grin that he likes it. He agrees to register Jin's name. He scribbles it on a scrap of paper. Pirate King Cosmos then shoves the paper at Jyn, informing him that he is now in Group 13. He tells Jyn to take it, sarcastically adding that the people inside will kindly guide him and welcome him to the competition with romance and love. A short time later, a figure wearing a head covering takes the slip of paper from Jyn Runandell's hand. The figure announces Group 13. Jyn Runandell confidently suggests they pair him with someone decent, adding that if there isn't anyone suitable, he couldn't care less if they decided to feed him to the sharks. The announcer notes that this year is full of young upstarts and even mentions another individual, a rascal, who managed to beat up the captain. He then expresses his regret that they are not in the tournament, in the same group, because he wants you all to fight to the death. Even so, good luck, Jyn Runandell. Maybe we'll actually meet in the finals, though you'll need a god-tier amount of luck for that. Now, the area for Group 13 is right over there, so you should get going. I'll see you later, assuming you're still alive. Jyn Runandell asked, "What about my room?" The man just told him to figure it out himself. Jyn wondered, did they not even prepare enough rooms? He noted that there were 2 or 3 people crammed into each one. He concluded that the organizers wanted them to clash in these cramped quarters, making it less of a fighting competition and more of a pure survival game. At that moment, another participant confronted him. Who the hell are you? Don't you see that there are already 3 people in this room? The man told another to beat it, while Jyn simply declared, I'm going to count to 3, and by the time I'm done, everyone better be out of my sight. He began counting 1, 2, 3, as another started cursing at him. Jyn immediately fought back, and just then another person walked into the room. Jyn gripped his sword and asked, So, who wants to stay with me? A few lowlifes rushed in to attack, yelling for him to die, but Jin's counterattack was swift. He remarked, Even though this place is a lawless pit, it's nothing compared to Mammoth. For the time being, it looks like I won't be getting any sleep. The man with the head covering returned, sounding annoyed. Are you planning on killing off the competition before the match even begins? Jyn replied flatly, This was just the opening act before the main show. The hooded man responded, I thought you were just an arrogant brat, but just as the captain said, You're dangerously intense. Now I see why he insisted on putting you with the decent guys. He mentioned that groups 1 and 2 would be starting their matches soon, and that he'd be fighting some of them later, so Jyn could go watch the fights if he wanted. He then invited Jyn to come along, offering to personally escort him. He added, Just know that swinging a sword around in the spectator stands is forbidden, so you'll have to just sit down and watch comfortably. Jyn thought this was a great development, observing the massive crowd that had gathered. He didn't think anyone there would recognize his face, but he realized he should have been more careful with his disguise. It's a classic trope how a hero in a reborn manhwa hides his identity. He asked the man, Did you hear the rumor that half the guys in Group 13 got completely wiped out? Did you happen to place a bet on any of them? So, who did it? The man clarified that besides that particular incident, he'd heard a rumor that there was a reserve flag bearer from the Runandell family participating. A woman in a green dress asked, A Runandell reserve flag bearer? Why would a Runandell ever come to a place like this? Her friend replied, I heard it directly from the Cosmos pirate executives while I was drinking with them yesterday. He said there's a powerful boy among the participants, and if the rumor is true, he's from the Runandell family. The friend laughed, speculating, if it's true, the boy could be Deatona, Htona, or even the reincarnated prodigy, Jyn Runandell. He added, It would be incredible if it were Jyn Runandell, especially after all the chaos that ensued when that young guy became a 5-star knight. He considered the possibility, could it really be someone from the Runandell family? The thought alone is crazy. It's one thing for them to recognize the name Jyn Runandell, but he's genuinely surprised they're also aware of the Htona twins. He reflects that it's about damn time the Htona twins' reputation started to spread. If they are indeed participating, he decides he'll hunt them down and put them on night watch duty just as the fireworks display kicks off. In the meantime, the Pirate King Cosmos arrives. He steps into view and addresses all the fine ladies and gentlemen who have graced the arena, asking if the wait has bored them to death. He introduces himself with a grand flourish as the Pirate King, Cosmos, laughing as he notes the massive crowd that has gathered to fill his coffers, remarking that they don't seem to know how to manage their own wealth. He then suggests they cut that small talk and dive right into the main event. He explains that there are 14 combatants per group, across a total of 13 groups. This brings the total to a staggering 182 martial artists, all on standby. He then announces that the star of the opening match previously reached the octafinals. And for his opponent, he introduces the deceptively cherubic fighter from the Shark Pirates, Mez, who is making his debut this year. He dramatically questions what power lurks behind that pretty facade before introducing the boy's swordsman, Paul Mick. Jyn Ran remarks that Paul Mick seems exceptionally young, observing that there are many youthful participants this time around. But even so, considering his age, he finds it a little too young. He wonders if the boy is merely 13 or 14, thinking this is the kind of world where a reborn manhwa hides a protagonist's true power. Suddenly, a man with a scarred face brings up another fighter, not the boy, but some idiot who laid hands on their captain. As the fighter enters the ring, the announcer declares that the battle will now commence. Paul Mick instantly closes the distance and attacks. In a flash, he slices clean through his opponent's neck. The Pirate King Cosmos bellows, demanding to know what just transpired and if anyone got a clear look. He expresses his sheer annoyance at the incompetent shark pirates. Another spectator gasps that the man's head just tumbled off, finding the scene completely surreal. All the while, Jyn Runandell calmly notes that Dante Heron was decapitated in a single moment by pure sword aura. Veridin Zippel leaps up, declaring the match's abrupt end and announcing Paul Mick as the winner. He roars with excitement, calling it a real fight and proclaiming he's betting everything he has on Paul Mick. He cheers wildly for the boy, completely forgetting his supposed support for Dante Heron. Jyn Runandell can only wonder why on earth Veridin Zippel is even here. Hearing the crowd chant Paul Mick's name, one person declares their intent to place a wager as well, while another encourages everyone to bet on Paul Mick. Veridin Zippel then loudly asks if they can't see that Paul Mick is the future, urging the entire crowd to bet everything, even their life savings on him. Jyn Runandell starts to consider if Veridin Zippel might also be on a mission, but he quickly concludes the man is far too engrossed to be on any official business. If he were to be caught, it would cause a monumental scandal, so Jyn decides it's best to simply play along. Just then, Veridin Zippel notices Jyn Runandell. He calls out a friendly greeting, saying it's been a long time. Paul Mick glances over, his eyes widening as he recognizes Veridin Zippel. He recalls their previous encounter at a Zippel family banquet. He's astonished to see such a familiar and open greeting in this lawless place. Paul Mick then extends his own hand, expressing what a pleasure it is to see Veritin Zippel again. At this, the Pirate King Cosmos approaches him, suggesting they hear a word from the winner before moving on to the next match. He asks Paul Mick how he feels about his victory. Paul Mick calmly replies that he's glad to have eliminated one of the world's great evils, adding with a smirk that he just hopes the defeated fellow isn't reincarnated as a pirate in his next life. The Pirate King Cosmos lets out an amused chuckle. He clapped a hand on Paul Mick's shoulder, noting that a pirate's life is hardly a path for a child. Yet, he joked that such a comment might just offend the seasoned buccaneers in their midst. With a hearty laugh, he added that every pirate here would be thrilled to hear young Paul Mick's ambition. Pirate King Cosmos then bellowed for the next match to begin, summoning the next combatants to the stage. Jyn Runandell watched the ensuing battles, yet none of the fighters managed to capture his attention, save for Paul Mick. He was utterly convinced that the boy was none other than Dante Heron. It's a classic case of what a reborn Manhwa hides. He recognized that while Paul Mick looked incredibly young, his swordsmanship told a completely different story. The only logical conclusion was that he was a member of the Heron clan. Jyn Runandell knew that to win, he'd have to unleash both his magic and shadow energy. Relying on his sword skills alone would not be enough. He decided it was too soon to make a final judgment and glanced down at a magical stone in his hand, noting that starting tomorrow, some brackets would conclude their matches, which meant he had a full 4 days before his turn. Until then, his only job was to survive the treacherous nights on this island. Meanwhile, Sir Elder sat in his chamber, remarking sternly, "I didn't give you that to use as a common toy. That is an artifact the young patriarch is meant to use only in a moment of absolute necessity. I must ask you to please keep it somewhere secure." Across from him, Veritin Zippel casually swung his chain and offered a flimsy apology, saying, "I just feel so much lighter with this in my hands." He then smirked, "So, is this why you summoned me?" Sir Elder began to explain, "Every year, around this very time, a grand martial arts tournament is held on one of the northern isles of the Bahu archipelago. It is known as the Cosmos Competitive Arena. Perhaps you've heard of it, Veritin Zippel?" Veritin Zippel feigned ignorance, replying, "This is the first I'm hearing of it. How would I possibly know about some backwater martial arts competition run by pirates?" He chuckled, continuing his act and wondering aloud where Sir Elder vanished to each year. Ignoring the charade, Sir Elder continued, "Dante Heron, the future head of the Heron family, who you met at last year's banquet, is competing again this time. I encourage you to seize this opportunity to witness his abilities firsthand. This is the caliber of the man you must one day surpass." Elsewhere, Veritin Zippel had already arrived, having heard similar rumors. He mused that it was a fine chance to make some side money, but found himself wondering why there hadn't been a single entertaining match in 2 full days. He had to admit, it was impressive to see Dante Heron's prowess, but the rest of the competition was utterly mediocre. He voiced his disappointment with this year's lineup, wondering where all the decent fighters had gone. His eyes scanned a list of participant names, and suddenly he saw Jyn Gray. Who is Jyn Gray? He wondered, a suspicion dawning on him. Could this actually be Jyn himself? Realizing he wasn't here merely to spectate, he felt a thrill course through him. The situation had just become infinitely more exciting. Some time later, Jyn Runandell surveyed the remaining combatants. Their numbers had dwindled to 147, with 35 already dead. As he sank down, exhausted from his last fight, he noted that only 5 had perished during their official matches. The rest were eliminated outside the arena. He braced himself, knowing competitors from other groups would be storming in soon. This whole setup is like a story where a reincarnated hero must be on alert, making it impossible to lower his guard for even a second. He grimly considered the price of falling asleep. He recalled his brutal sleep deprivation training from his cadet days, however, lasting for 3 days in this desolate wasteland without concealing their presence presents a fresh challenge. He surmises they must be supremely confident in their abilities. Just then, Paul Mick cuts in, acknowledging the rudeness of his request upon their first meeting, but asking for a moment of his time to speak. Jyn Runandell's thoughts turn to Paul Mick, or rather, Dante Heron. A classic case, he muses, of how a protagonist in a reborn manhwa hides his true strength, while the boy asks for a chance to sleep. He promises to stand watch the following day, allowing Jyn Runandell to finally rest. A startled Jyn demands to know what this is all about, appearing so suddenly. The stranger explains he has been observing since the day before and could tell that Jyn was, at the very least, a true martial artist, and so he pleads for a chance to sleep. Jyn Runandell retorts that the boy can't even handle the Heron's sleepless training regimen. Before he collapses to the floor, instantly asleep, Jyn Runandell, feeling as though he's been reincarnated into this very conflict, is left to contemplate the overwhelming stench of blood and the constant harassment from countless individuals. Meanwhile, an elderly man approaches from just outside the room. He whispers for his allies to wait for his signal, but Jyn Runandell intercepts him, sword already drawn for an attack. Jyn Runandell asks if he is deaf to the rumors, warning that anyone who enters this room is guaranteed to die. A masked man pleads for him to wait. He acknowledges that Jyn has already dispatched every one of the group's 13 assassins, but insists they are not here to fight him. They have come for an entirely different reason. He states that if Jyn Runandell hands over Paul Mick, who just went inside, he will be spared. But Jyn Runandell parries the attack, snatches the arrow from the air, and after a quick glance, asks if it's poisoned. He declares that regardless of the circumstances, resorting to such tactics against a mere child is completely unacceptable. He doesn't know who is masterminding this plot, but he wonders if they can truly handle the fallout. Jyn Runandell then mentions the scoundrels who were chasing him, stating they were subordinates of the pirate, One-Eyed Joe. He explains that the last one confessed everything before taking his final breath. Their entire plan was to abduct a Runandell and extort a fortune. At this, Paul Mick thanks him for protecting a complete stranger, someone with no connection to him whatsoever, and expresses his astonishment at the situation, wondering how Jyn was ever mistaken for one of those heartless and ignorant brutes. He asks where Jyn Runandell was during all the commotion. Jyn Runandell says he ought to explain, since he's now in his debt. He clarifies that he is, in fact, nobility like they were targeting, just not a Runandell. He tells them to think of him as a Vermont noble, but apologizes for being unable to provide any more detailed information. Paul Mick expresses his immense gratitude, declaring that Jyn Runandell has saved his life and asks how he can ever repay this monumental debt. He suggests a simple creed, an eye for an eye, a life for a life. He vows that from this moment on, whenever Jyn Runandell is in danger, he will also shield him with his own life, no matter the situation, and swears this upon his honor. Jyn Runandell coolly responds that it's up to Paul Mick to figure that out for himself. His only priority right now is sleep, so he requests to be woken before the Group 13 matches commence. Jyn Runandell clarifies that Paul Mick's current guard duty is unrelated to the vow he just swore, so there's no need for him to worry. He thinks to himself that although Paul Mick seems cold, he's the kind of man who would fight for someone he just met, and already, he feels like a dependable ally. Suddenly, another assailant arrives to attack Jyn Runandell, but Paul Mick intercepts with a devastating counter, knocking the man out cold. The announcer declares Paul Mick the winner as he once again finishes his opponent with a single blow, causing the crowd to erupt in cheers, chanting Paul Mick's name. The crowd roars for the victor, yet they also hail Jyn Gray as a formidable contender, with his name echoing through the arena. One spectator comments on how truly impressive Jyn Gray is, speculating that he might even possess greater strength than Paul Mick. His companion, however, dismisses the notion, insisting that Jyn Gray is still leagues below a reserve flag bearer from the legendary Runandell family, and firmly asserts that Jyn Gray is simply not a Runandell. Another onlooker remarks that this year's finalists appear to be a foregone conclusion between those two young warriors, suggesting that due to these prodigious contenders, the entire competition is already effectively settled. They then probe their friend, asking if he intends to remain on the sidelines. Just then, another warrior arrives, conceding that while the two may be quite skilled, it's just two individuals, and they should rally their own group before the winner's faction gets organized. However, a figure with a covered head intervenes, advising them to abandon their scheme, as their group is no match for Jyn Gray, whose moniker, the God of Death, is well earned. It's as if he's been reincarnated. He reveals they were roommates and bluntly asks if they truly believe their plan could succeed, knowing Jyn's true power firsthand. He explains his intervention is to prevent their demise, as Jyn Gray has a surprisingly large following, and their deaths before the official matches would cause a major uproar. They walk away, concluding that nothing can be done and that they must halt their plans right there. The warrior challenges their hasty retreat, suggesting they just depart. Another concurs, pointing out that according to the program, their path won't intersect with Jyn's group anyway. They all agree, expressing their shared desire to avoid an early grave and affirming that they are the only ones privy to this plan, stressing that Cosmos must never discover it. At that moment, Pirate King Cosmos slams his hand on a table, demanding to know who is pulling the strings behind the winner, furious that schemes were hatched without his knowledge. The figure with a head covering asks what he intends to do, pointing out that such blatant manipulation will make the competition dull and the audience will surely catch on. Pirate King Cosmos retorts that it's better to just tear up the entire schedule, since Jyn Gray and Paul Mick are already on a collision course for the finals. He elaborates that aside from those two, every other participant is now just a sacrificial pawn. The way this plot unfolds, it's like a story from a reborn Manhwa hides a darker purpose. He declares his intention to inflate the dividend rates to astronomical levels, so ridiculously high that people wouldn't be able to sleep if they failed to place a bet. Pirate King Cosmos proclaims that from the winner's match to the grand finals, everything will proceed at lightning speed, emphasizing that the ultimate objective is to rake in as much money as possible. All the while, the crowd's chants for Paul Mick grow louder. Veridon Zippel makes his entrance, remarking on the two stars of the show, one a shocking supernova from the very beginning, the other a god of death steeped in blood since day one. He turns to his companion and asks for his prediction on the winner. When a masked man calls out for Paul Mick, his friend nods in agreement, commenting that Paul Mick's swordsmanship appears more polished and refined. He then asks if he too had wagered on Paul Mick. Veridon Zippel coolly reveals that he placed a bet of 1,000 gold on Jyn Gray. His companion points out that Jyn Gray's dividend is a staggering 3 times that sum, and he questions whether the pirates would actually honor a payout of 3 million gold. Veridon Zippel clarifies that Cosmos is a notorious pirate who owns several islands, so he can easily cover the payout by simply selling off some of his assets. Growing impatient, Pirate King Cosmos bellows his title and demands they start the match, urging them to get on with it and start calling for Paul Mick. From the crowd, a lone voice shouts for Jyn Gray, identifying him as the Grim Reaper of Group 13, and suddenly, wine mugs and rotting vegetables are hurled in his direction as Pirate King Cosmos watches on, deep in thought. He declares they'll be doubling the entrance fee next year and suggests they cut the lengthy speeches and get right to the action. In response to the call, Paul Mick makes a grand entrance onto the battlefield. It is then announced that his opponent is none other than the unknown young swordsman from Group 13, Jyn Gray, who also makes his way into the arena. Zippel expresses his absolute faith in Jyn Gray, placing all his hopes on him, which leaves Jyn wondering about the reason for such intense support. Pirate King Cosmos proclaims there's no need to wait any longer and officially commences the match, while Paul Mick pledges to fight with all his honor. In turn, Jyn Gray draws his magical sword, coolly inviting Paul Mick to attack with everything he has. They immediately clash, rushing to strike one another in a flurry of blows as Jyn Gray and Paul Mick exchange attacks, each seeking to defeat their rival. Jyn Gray reflects that his initial assault was swift, but he is now strategically conserving his energy. He's only increasing his speed when absolutely necessary, which means he is forced to match Paul Mick's relentless pace for the time being. A spectator comments that witnessing a fight of this caliber in a place like this is absolutely incredible, while another urges them on, asking how this could ever be called a mere children's fight. Paul Mick notes that Jyn Gray is holding up surprisingly well, but if he's concealing his true power, it would be wise to unleash it now. Deciding to escalate, Jyn Gray surges forward with incredible speed, but Paul Mick skillfully evades the attack. A fan in the crowd roars, "Yeah, Paul Mick, that's it, get him. Send that scoundrel straight into the abyss." Paul Mick glances over, his focus unwavering. He thinks to himself, that's right, that's his strength. Destructive swordsmanship powered by a blessed physique, a body so perfect it's as if he were reincarnated for combat. He considers how his own superior stamina is the foundation of that physique, and he has been purposely dragging out the fight to exploit it. He recognizes that, just like himself, Jyn Gray is merely an alias for someone far more significant. But if this is all he has, then he has made a fatal miscalculation. Paul Mick lunges at Jyn Gray, who counters effortlessly and pushes him back as Zippel observes. Paul Mick is left wondering what just happened, trying to process the sheer speed and power of the counter. He realizes that if his slash had connected, he would have been struck by some other unseen force. The very secret this reborn Manhwa hides is about to be revealed, as Jyn has almost used his shadow energy. Bracing himself for a grueling battle, Jyn asks, "Is it my turn now?" Before launching another ferocious assault which Paul Mick barely manages to block. He thinks in disbelief that it wasn't a simple cut. Every single one of Jin's sword attacks carries the same devastating force as his very first swing. Paul Mick considers that his opponent seems flawless and that perhaps he should have gone all out from the very beginning. However, he hesitates, thinking, no, if this continues, I might actually end up killing him. At that moment, Jyn Runandell's voice cuts in, telling him to stop messing around and asking why he is hesitating. He then declares with absolute authority, "I am a Runandell," and addresses his opponent by his true name, Dante Heron, warning him not to make this fight a shameful one. Dante Heron simply replies, "Okay," acknowledging that he had, in fact, shown a dishonorable side of himself. He then asks if Jyn will finally fight him seriously. As they resume their battle, the two combatants clash with renewed intensity. They trade blows, each striving to overwhelm the other. Jyn Gray attacks again, pushing Dante away, who shouts and charges forward to counterattack, but Jyn Gray is faster, striking him once more. Dante can only stare at his opponent's face, a flicker of fear crossing his eyes. While trying to counter, Jyn thinks to himself that Paul Mick must surely be at his limit, wondering how he is still able to endure. He recognizes Paul Mick as a true prodigy who appears only once every few centuries, a talent so blessed by the gods it's as if he were reincarnated. Jyn Runandell observed, however, that Paul Mick was born with an exceptionally fragile and feeble body, an utterly inadequate vessel for the immense talent it contained. He reminisced about his own journey through hell, a product of that accursed fate, a path he knew intimately as reincarnated soul, which is precisely how he recognized Paul Mick as Dante Heron. The memories flooded back, his solitary suffering in what felt like eternal darkness, and the profound despair that washed over him each time he gazed upon his own thin, skeletal frame. In the present, Jyn Runandell lunged at him once more, but Paul Mick expertly parried the blow, his mind racing with the thought of how he had to push himself to the very brink of oblivion just to reach this point. With a surge of power, he forced Jyn Runandell back and charged at him again. He was consumed by rage, his thoughts fixed on Jyn Runandell, the 13th child of the clan, a man who was born with every conceivable advantage. He unleashed another ferocious attack, and Jyn Runandell deflected it. Paul Mick seethed, thinking how his opponent possessed a blessed physique, innate talent, and absolutely everything else. Yet, he could sense a profound desperation radiating from him. He couldn't comprehend why someone so gifted would seem so pitifully desperate, wondering if it was perhaps just rage, because he was the youngest and therefore not in the direct line of succession. But he quickly dismissed that notion, convinced it wasn't for some petty reason like that. No, this man simply aimed to become the absolute strongest. His mind then turned to his own journey, reflecting on how long he had endured to arrive at this very moment. As their blades clashed once more, Paul Mick realized he couldn't even remember anymore. losing count of how many times he had plunged into the depths of despair, or how many times he had succumbed to utter despondency. Just then, Jyn Runandell violently threw him aside. Yet, Paul Mick landed and regained his footing, his full power surging as he reflected on the countless times he had forced himself back up, unable to recall a single one of those moments. He charged forward once more, launching another assault. Jyn Runandell blocked the strike and executed a swift counter, causing Paul Mick to suddenly start coughing up blood, his mind reeling as he wondered what was happening. Jyn noticed that Dante Heron's vessel was literally breaking apart, but he refused to withdraw his sword. Even as he saw visible cracks spreading across Paul Mick's body, he considered holding back now to be the ultimate insult. He pushed him back, offering a silent apology and asking for his opponent's understanding as he lunged forward, bringing his blade perilously close to Paul Mick's neck. But then, Paul Mick began to laugh, which caused Jyn to halt his attack and stare, baffled that his opponent was actually enjoying this. A moment later, Paul Mick collapsed to the ground, and Jyn Runandell looked down at him. "Medic!" he bellowed. Veridin Zippel rushed to the scene, quickly checking on Paul Mick and remarking that the situation was far worse than he had ever anticipated. He turned to Jyn Runandell, assuring him not to worry, and promised he would ensure Paul Mick's survival before beginning his healing magic. Jyn Runandell had summoned Veridin Zippel, who now confidently told him to simply watch. However, Jyn immediately realized it was far too late. Paul Mick's condition had deteriorated beyond the point where any conventional magic could possibly heal him. It wasn't just his bones that were shattered. Absolutely nothing in his body, including his vital organs, remained intact, and his aura was running completely rampant. Jyn Runandell understood with chilling clarity that applying healing magic in this state would do nothing but intensify Paul Mick's excruciating pain. Veridin Zippel instructed him to listen closely as he revealed a hidden chain, whispering that the true power ****reborn Manhwa hides **** would be their secret. Just then, another warrior arrived. The newcomer advised against using the artifact, stating it was something that should never be employed. Veridin Zippel waved off the concern, telling the warrior to shield them with his cape, an order he promptly followed. Veridin Zippel then remarked on the warrior's complete lack of tact, noting how he utterly failed to read the gravity of the room. Jyn Runandell then inquired about the mysterious object, to which Veridin Zippel responded in the affirmative. He explained that it was a gift bestowed upon him by his clan quite recently, and then proceeded to ask if Jyn Runandell happened to know of the legendary blood of Numerous. Jyn's mind raced, recalling that Numerous was the ancient god of hope. This artifact predates the founding of the holy state of Vanilla. It was believed to have been completely lost during a catastrophic event in the distant past. He recalled the legend of how the Numerous left behind their tears and 100 drops of their blood as they were utterly annihilated. The tears were said to possess the power to revive the dead, while the blood could instantly cure any ailment or injury. He mused that, back then, this relic became an object of intense public fascination, a treasure so priceless that no one even dared to assign it a value. He contemplated how even major powers, such as the Zippel clan, had once desperately scoured the world for these artifacts, which had since become godlike legacies passed down only through myth and legend. And now, he was about to witness one of these legendary items being used on Dante Heron, and he couldn't help but wonder about the true reasons for this act, questioning it since the Zippel and Heron clans were not known for their friendly relations. Why would a Zippel go to such extraordinary lengths for him? At that moment, Veridin Zippel produced a small pill, murmuring if Dante Heron would understand his intentions before placing the pill into Dante Heron's mouth. He remarked quietly that losing a worthy rival is just as sorrowful as losing a dear friend. The moment Dante Heron swallowed the pill, his body began to mend itself, radiating a brilliant light. He regained consciousness with a sharp cough and slowly opened his eyes. Veridin Zippel's face lit up, expressing his relief at seeing him awake, while a disoriented Dante Heron began to inquire about his surroundings. He asked Veridin Zippel what on earth he was doing there. Jyn Runandell watched in awe, reflecting on how the blood of Numerous had instantly revived a man who had been at death's door. He couldn't fathom why Veridin Zippel would use such a potent relic for this single purpose alone. Veridin Zippel then admitted, as if reading his mind, that the price for using the blood of Numerous was indeed immense, a fact he was well aware of. Dante Heron, tapping his own head in a daze, asked about the legendary artifact and how he could possibly repay such a monumental favor. Jyn thought to himself that this was more in line with the kind of steep demand he expected from a Zippel, but Veridin simply stated that first and foremost, Jyn Runandell would be the one to buy him a hearty round of drinks once all of this was over. He insisted that he would be sticking around this time and absolutely would not take no for an answer. Veridin Zippel added that the next time Jyn Runandell saw him somewhere else, he'd better not pretend as if he didn't know him. He asked pointedly. Got it? Jyn Runandell reflected on Veridin, whom he'd initially dismissed as an idiot. The kind of hidden depth a reincarnated, reborn Manhwa hides in its side characters was now on full display. The man was turning out to be surprisingly cool. Jyn replied that he would consider Veridin's proposal. Later, as they gathered in a hotel, Veridin Zippel praised Jyn Runandell for his remarkable performance, just as he was asked to select one of the prizes for their victory. He then commented on how audacious Jyn Runandell was for wanting to claim both of the prizes. Jin's mind flashed back to how he had nearly perished in this very place, wishing Veridin had only requested one prize, as there was a clear limit to how mismatched their power levels could be. He let out a small chuckle, acknowledging that they had both come dangerously close to death. Veridin Zippel replied, saying that while he didn't particularly have a need for both prizes, since the opportunity presented itself, he would just give the bag of coins to Dante Heron. He joked that it wasn't as if the Heron clan was short on funds, but the gesture would be commemorative. He even planned to have a single coin framed. Veridin Zippel then suggested giving Jyn something in return, which immediately captured Jin's attention as he was examining a piece of parchment. Jyn Runandell asked if this was the legendary treasure map he had only ever heard about in stories, questioning if Veridin Zippel truly intended to part with something so incredibly valuable. Veridin Zippel clarified that the map was Jin's now, as he held up the bag of coins. He then asked if Jin's prize was just an empty chest. Jyn Runandell expressed his sincere gratitude, and then turned to ask Dante Heron a question. He questioned why Dante held back, wondering why he hadn't used his secret technique as instructed, stressing the importance of executing things properly. Dante Heron shot back that he couldn't possibly know what Jyn Runandell was hiding, but this whole situation felt like some reborn manhwa hides its main character's true strength, and it was unfair to keep things concealed, and then only mention them after the fact. Jyn mused to himself that Dante's intuition was as sharp as expected, though he feigned ignorance, denying he understood the accusation. In response, Dante Heron offered that they should fight again, but next time with nothing hidden between them should it become necessary. Veridin Zippel readily agreed, expressing his anticipation for the day they would lead their own clans and finally face each other in a proper battle. He joked that he was repeating himself, but perhaps it would be better if they all just settled down and tried to maintain a friendly relationship instead. Jyn Runandell remarked on the softness of Veridin Zippel's words, to which Veridin explained that he was simply pointing out that, if anything went wrong, it would lead to immense trouble, and they all needed to be cautious and mindful of their actions. Dante Heron contemplated that even if they were sitting here, clinking glasses together in a circle, it was inevitable that they would one day face each other on the battlefield. He considered the profound paradox of being both an enemy and a friend, and so, they toasted their drinks in a brief moment of camaraderie. Veridin Zippel then wondered aloud how their contradictory relationship would end, before mentioning the impersonator, asking if the others had heard about the man who thinks he's been reincarnated as him. Meanwhile, the pirate king Cosmos stormed into his storage room only to find all of his treasure gone, furiously cursing the noble scoundrels who had taken everything. Dante Heron questioned how an impostor could dare to impersonate Veridin right in the heart of Zippel family territory, expressing his amazement at their sheer audacity. Veridin admitted he didn't know who it was, but he had to acknowledge their boldness. Veridin Zippel explained that recently, due to the incident involving his uncle Andre Zippel, their family's honor had been significantly tarnished. He clarified that he wasn't mentioning this for Dante Heron's sake, and added that the rumor of Jyn Runandell's involvement also remained unconfirmed. Jyn Runandell then inquired about Veridin Zippel's plan for handling the impersonator. Veridin Zippel responded that while he certainly needed to catch them, he was considering hiring a high-ranking mage to track them down. Jyn Runandell disagreed with this approach, suggesting that if it were him, he would use the rumor to his advantage and improve his public image. He explained that publicly announcing a search for an impostor in Zippel territory would only make him appear weak and foolish, causing others to look down upon him. Jyn then confidently mentioned that he could catch the impersonator himself. After a moment, Veridin Zippel agreed, saying that now that he thought about it, Jyn was right, and they should discuss it upon his return. Jyn Runandell asked if they were ending the conversation there. Dante Heron then questioned what was settled, and Jyn explained that if he stayed any longer, he might actually start to like Veridin Zippel. Unlike the two of them, he had many other pressing tasks to attend to. Veridin Zippel asked if this was related to the reserve flag bearer matter, and Jyn Runandell confirmed, yes, let's just say it's because of that. Veridin Zippel replied, all right, and said he would see him next time, calling him a friend. As Jyn Runandell walked away, he wondered to himself whose decision it truly was. After some time, the name Jyn Runandell surfaced in his thoughts. Veridin Zippel asked if this was related to the reserve flag bearer matter, and Jyn Runandell confirmed, yes, let's just say it's because of that. Veridin Zippel replied, all right, and said he would see him next time, calling him a friend. As Jyn Runandell walked away, he questioned whose decision it truly was. After some time, Jyn Runandell. Runandell receives correspondence from Kashmir Alphen, noting with some amusement that he'd always advised the man to be concise. Therefore, this brief note feels like a playful jab. Knighton, ever vigilant, asks if something has happened to the young master. Runandell clarifies that all is well. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Jyn has defeated Heron's grandson, a massive 6-star achievement. This victory is a clear testament to Jin's diligence. He then instructs Knighton to inform Kashmir Alphen that they will share a drink soon. With his message delivered, Jyn Runandell casts a spell and vanishes. His urgency to meet Alphen made perfectly clear. Knighton acknowledges his orders with a bow. Elsewhere, Jyn Runandell is meeting with Kashmir Alphen, who asks if Jyn feels a chill. It's a strange question, given they're sitting right beside a warm fire. Nearby, Julia is preoccupied, playing with a kitten, as Jyn confirms that he does. He feels a definite cold breeze despite the roaring flames and muses that perhaps he's coming down with a cold. Kashmir Alphonse suggests he take some medicine. He then apologizes for changing the subject before asking if he might see the map Jyn had mentioned. At this, Jyn Runandell retrieves the item. He takes out the map, explaining that the drawing is a bit rough, but perhaps Kashmir Alphonse will recognize it, and lays the map out on the table. Kashmir Alphonse studies it, admitting this is the first time he's seen a map of this kind, and he's not confident he can find the location with this alone. He holds the parchment in his hand, examining it intently. Julia then approaches, her eyes wide with curiosity about the map. She excitedly asks if it's a treasure map, insisting she wants to join the adventure. Kashmir is taken aback by her sudden enthusiasm. Alphonse, startled by her sudden presence, looks at her in surprise before pointing to one location on the map and beginning to explain. There is something of great importance here, he says, before pointing to another spot. And here, something incredibly precious is being guarded very carefully. As he finishes, Julia suddenly bursts into tears. Kashmir Alphonse is stunned by her reaction, begging her to stop crying as Muran rushes over. Muran grabs her, shouting that her authority is spiraling out of control and that they must summon the guardian dragon to calm her down. He tells Kashmir to call for Luri immediately. Kashmir quickly agrees and calls out, and within a single minute, Luri arrives. Muran explains that she lost control in an instant after seeing something and trusts that Luri will be able to pacify her. Luri takes her gently into his arms, assuring the others he will handle it. He softly tells her to take a deep breath, promising that she's safe. "It's okay now," he murmurs. "I'm right here with you." He continues to comfort her, telling her there's no reason to be afraid. Everything will be all right. At that moment, Alicia Badger arrives, demanding to know what is going on and why her daughter is in tears. Luri assures her that everything is fine now. Nestled in his embrace, Julia finally succumbs to sleep. Alicia Badger takes the sleeping child into her lap, and Luri confirms that the episode has passed. Muran expresses his gratitude to Luri. Luri replies that he was too focused to offer a proper greeting before. Muran waves off the pleasantries and gets straight to the point. He asks what the child saw, questioning if it was a vision of the future. Luri shakes his head, clarifying that she saw the past. Muran presses further, asking what he means by the past and if it was some sort of grudge. Luri explains that when a mills contractor looks into the past, they often see a deep-seated grudge or attachment, the kind of dark secret a reincarnated, reborn Manhwa hides in its lore. This occurred because the child saw an object or location that was deeply connected to those potent emotions. He adds that if he had arrived any later, something catastrophic would have happened. It was a close call. It was a truly terrifying event. Muran, now completely engrossed, requests more details, asking Luri to describe the vision she saw from that primeval land. Shielding one eye, Luri recounted the tragic history, explaining how the indigenous people of that land worshipped a deity all their own. They intentionally isolated themselves from outside civilizations, a choice that allowed them to thrive in tranquility. This sacred peace was maintained for generations, right up until the outsiders appeared on their shores. He explained that the people who arrived were mages. Initially, they feigned a desire to learn the local culture, approaching the natives with false friendship and hidden motives. However, their true intentions surfaced when they began excavating the land, searching for something, and their demands grew ever more unreasonable. Their greed ultimately escalated to violence. They murdered a native child and began eliminating anyone who stood in their way. All of this was to seize one particular item, the divine relic that the natives held sacred, which Jyn Runandell found particularly interesting. Jyn Runandell pondered the notion of a tribe worshipping a divine relic, then asked Sir Latry if he could describe its appearance. Latry agreed, asking for a moment as he began to sketch, explaining what the hallowed object looked like. He described it as a seemingly ordinary silver mirror, but one that emanated a soft, ethereal light as he committed its form to paper for Jyn Runandell to see. Examining the finished sketch, he knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was the legendary artifact mirror, once famous for its incredible magical properties. Its existence only became public knowledge thanks to a courageous reporter who exposed the Zippel family's unimaginable brutality to the world. He remembered it all, how the Zippel clan had ruthlessly exploited the inhabitants of the Kowloon ruins in their fanatical search for the artifact. He felt like an reincarnated soul, recalling how he personally confirmed the depths of their depravity during one of his past cadet missions. This memory forged an undeniable link between the desolate landscape of the Kowloon ruins and the mages loyal to the Zippel family, a connection Jyn Runandell now fully understood. He then understood with chilling clarity. This map pointed directly to the mirror's location. Elsewhere, a figure in a purple gown sat perched on the edge of a building. They sipped wine and laughed softly to themselves, remarking on the dangerous temptation to grow fond of those scoundrels. Such attachments, they mused, were a risk if one lingered too long in this lonely existence, before complimenting the fine taste of the alcohol. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Lady Lisa expressed her profound relief that the awaited time had finally arrived, preparing herself to receive a special guest. She prayed fervently, tears of anticipation streaming down her face, while Jyn Runandell stared at the mirror's pattern, contemplating its incredible meaning. To think that a map acquired from a simple pirate was the key to a secret of this magnitude. It's the kind of twist reborn Manhwa hides for its climax. Muan, noticing his intense expression, asked what was troubling him. But Jyn Runandell knew he couldn't possibly reveal the truth. In this precarious situation, he simply stated that something felt amiss, an answer Moroccan seemed to accept before moving on. Jyn Runandell then contacted Kashmir Alphen, who immediately apologized for the ordeal Yura had endured within the territory, but Jyn Runandell quickly reassured him. He explained that it was a rite of passage, a trial that all divine contractors must eventually face, and that he had been anticipating it. Re then assured Kashmir Alphen that they would always stand by Yuria's side, promising to protect her regardless of the dangers ahead. Kashmir Alphen expressed his deep gratitude, acknowledging that they now understood this was no ordinary map and that they needed to act decisively. He announced his plan to find an expert who could decipher the ancient language inscribed on the map, a task he intended to entrust to a specialist. He would give the task to the seven-colored peacock. Jyn Runandell agreed to leave it to him, though he privately doubted the task would be that difficult. His mind wandered back to the massacre of the Kholin people by the Zippels centuries ago, a brutal genocide that had nearly wiped them from existence. Completely. The survivors are now imprisoned in Kholin, which leads Jyn Runandell to suspect they might locate the mirror before Zippel even gets a chance. The narrative then jumps forward 2 weeks, into the year 1796, on a day in February. On the 17th, Pan is spotted dancing wildly on the road, lamenting how everything is spiraling his life, the world, and even he himself. He even twists his ankle and collapses, remarking that it's all spiraling completely out of control, just as Jyn Runandell notices Pan's condition. He appears utterly exhausted, prompting Jyn to suggest that since they find themselves in similar predicaments, they might as well talk as friends. Pan demands to know who Jyn Runandell is, but Jyn dismisses the question as unimportant, mentioning he has more than enough drinks to share. Pan expresses his gratitude for the offer, calling Jyn Runandell a good man as he requests both a drink and some food. He then asks with a hint of humor if Jyn Runandell is some kind of angel. Jyn helps Pan up, offering his support and mentioning that his younger sister back home would surely appreciate this act of kindness. Jyn then shifts his attention, remarking on Pan's very distinct skin color. Pan replies that he's heard that plenty of times, explaining it's a common trait among his tribe. Jyn Runandell then inquires about this tribe, and Pan clarifies that his homeland is actually a vast distance from their current location. Taking a swig of his drink, he decides to drop the subject, explaining that continuing would only bring him sorrow. Jyn Runandell then mentions that his own homeland is also far away. He shows Pan something from that distant place, admitting he cannot decipher what is written on it. He asks if the man recognizes the paper he's holding. At this, the man erupts in anger, smashing his bottle, and shouts that he knows nothing. He then spots Ree and Moroccan nearby, commenting on their presence and asking who they are and why they dared to approach him. Knowing he's from Kholin, Jyn Runandell explains that he is the freeloader under the protection of Tan's defense, Captain, Elisa, and gestures to the black-haired man and the green-haired boy beside him, revealing them to be dragons. This astonishing revelation completely shocks the boy, who questions why Jyn would share all that information so freely. Jyn Runandell simply responds that he would have been forced to disclose these details sooner or later anyway. The boy clarifies that he understands the implications, advising Jyn to be far more cautious, as if he were a hero reincarnated into a dangerous new world. Jyn assures him that everything is fine and that there is no issue. He points out that they are not associated with the Zippel family and asks Pan how they managed to locate him. Jyn explains that they came across the map entirely by chance, adding that the green-haired boy is in fact the dragon of Asmael. The boy is stunned and asks for confirmation if Jyn Runandell truly meant Asmael. Jyn confirms this and elaborates that they were able to access the map's secrets using the authority of Asmael, which in turn revealed the deep-seated grudge contained within it. He adds that they have been desperately searching for anyone who knew about the map but had found no one until now, in what seemed to be a pure coincidence. Pan remarks that they somehow managed to find him, though he wonders how they accomplished it, assuming it must have been a coincidence. However, he then muses that perhaps it was something more than chance, that this whole situation, like a tale from a reborn Manhwa, hides a deeper destiny. He decides it would be best for them to meet his sister. After a short journey, they arrive at the tribe's location, where Lady Elisa greets them, expressing that she had been eagerly anticipating their arrival along with the esteemed individuals from Tanpan, and offers her apologies. Mirren apologized for bringing guests unannounced, but she assured him he'd done the right thing. He then asked why she seemed to be expecting them, to which she replied that this occasion was different. Jyn Runandell agreed, and she elaborated that it was not merely a sense of the divine. Rather, it was an aura that had no business being in a rundown place such as this. She attributed this presence solely to one individual, someone akin to the most noble bloodline of Kholin, or perhaps a person handpicked by the gods themselves. She continued, explaining this person was born from the main temple of swords, chosen by the Shadow, the last dragon of the Shadow clan, and the sworn guardian of the child so dearly treasured by the great Azil. She then brushed off any astonishment, claiming it was all just simple tricks, while Jyn Runandell contemplated the transcendental aura, feeling as though he had encountered it somewhere before. He looked directly at Lady Leosa and asked, "Are you a god?" She denied it, clarifying she was only a vessel, adding that if she were truly a god, she wouldn't be forced to live in hiding after losing her homeland. Moroccan mused that she might be the mortal incarnation of an ancient god, acknowledging her extraordinary perception and wondering if that was the entire story, noting that even her powerful presence would eventually fade. She conceded the sting of truth in the Black Dragon's words, but he simply shrugged it off, expressing his surprise at finding an ancient god residing in Kholin. Jyn Runandell pointed out that even if she had told him, he wouldn't have known any differently. She then asked him to show her the map once more. He complied, asking if she could make any sense of it. As she studied the map, she began to carefully read its inscription aloud. To the one who reads these words after winning the hearts of Colin, I implore you, do not forsake them. Come to this place and be their champion, and declare that they are a peaceful people who only wish to live. She then expressed a deep resentment for the monumental task given by God, a burden she lacked the strength to carry. She revealed that her late grandfather had created this map, a relic once destined for catastrophe under the name of Zippel.